So thank you everyone for coming along. It's really great to see such a large audience here. My name's Phil Jones. I think a lot of you have been dealing with me by email and by the Eventbrite page. My co-organiser Stefan Buzrowski is unfortunately running late today due to travel traffic, but he'll be along to chair the afternoon session hopefully.
High speed rail.
High speed rail, indeed, yes. Coming down from Manchester, very problematic. So today's workshop is the third in a series of workshops under the Hastia 2 banner. So we're Hastia 2.3 today. And Alison's going to say a little bit more about the Hastia project more generally in a moment. I'm just here to sort of briefly introduce the workshop and the kind of themes of the workshop. So we've got telling stories of maps, the geoweb, qualitative GIS, and narrative mapping. I do a little bit of GIS in my everyday work as a geographer, and a lot of GIS, the kind of things that we're familiar with GIS, are things like this. This is a map of Birmingham, a representation of Birmingham, shaded by the government's indices of multiple deprivation. So down here where the university is, we're relatively in the green zone. Oh dear. The problem with a touchscreen computer is that you really can't gesture too much. So for the future speakers, take note. Over here in Walsall Heath, you've got more a red zone. So you can colour things in and you can tell stories about places through the way that you colour in this kind of quantitative data. But that's not the only way that we can use GIS. You can make an argument that something like the first edition Ordnance Survey maps of Britain can be seen in some ways as a qualitative GIS. It's not just numerical data that's being displayed there about how long a particular road is or similar, but it's also saying something about the nature of the place. So this is the first edition OS of central Birmingham. This is St Philip's Church, still getting visited. And it says things like, here's the Conservative Club, here's the Blue Coat School. And you'll notice, if those who look closely, that there's various banks that are listed here, which a previous generation of students have highlighted in blue pencil, which makes me suspicious as to their motives finding bank jobs. But and one more image just to kind of illustrate this idea of qualitative GIS. This is an image from the village of Irby, where I grew up, which was taken in 1985 as part of the BBC's Doomsday Project. Which basically got school kids to take a square of the country and put some information about that square into a massive BBC-run database. So for each grid square you can have 3 photographs and 4 or 5 text entries. And this was put onto these massive 12-inch laser discs, and a fantastically advanced project for the times that came out in 1986, and nobody saw it because the technology was obsolete before it was finished and hugely expensive. A couple of years ago, the BBC put the entire database up onto their website, so you can actually see, for most people for the first time, that sort of 85-86 school children survey. So really interesting pioneering example, but the technology ran ahead of things. More modern technologies for qualitative GIS. This is a project I did a couple of years ago. I've advertised it in the book if people want to do this as a lunchtime exercise. There's the Map Local project where you use smartphones to take photographs and audio clips and record walks, and it uploads to a central server. So much less technologically difficult than in previous generations. Now, some of the things we're going to talk about today are how literary scholars have started engaging with words and maps and text and GIS. This is a lovely image that a friend of mine in Newcastle sent me of James Joyce's Ulysses, so a map of Dublin rendered in the text of Ulysses, made of bits of paper and stuck into a 3D map. A lovely notion. So we've got a whole different set of ways of representing space and maps, and the kind of way that literary scholars have become interested in space and GIS, really keying into the kind of spatial turn in social sciences and humanities over the last few years, which of course makes geographers like myself insanely jealous that we did this first and we did it better, of course. Today we've divided the sessions up into a morning and afternoon session. The morning session, narrative mapping in space and place, and a really exciting lineup of interdisciplinary speakers. And then in the afternoon, literature, networks and GIS. So just flipping it around very slightly, and again, a really exciting lineup with a finale with it, which I'm really looking forward to. So no pressure there. So that's all that I really want to say today. I'm going to be running around doing little bits of tech support to make sure things happen. I'm also going to chair the session to make sure people actually end on time, because there's nothing more frustrating than not being able to get to coffee and lunch. So that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to hand over now to Elton to give a bit of introduction to the Hestia project.